And welcome, Shani. I hope I'm pronouncing your name. I,
Correctly.
yeah, I had a girlfriend called Shani. My first
Julian
girlfriend.
did.
Yeah, like when I was like 17 or something.
Well,
Um,
okay. So let me share with the audience that Shani in Hebrew means scarlet or the a deep shade of red. So
really
yes, also learning something new today.
interesting. Yeah, I get so. My girlfriend, I mean, she spoke French, so I don't know why. She was definitely not Jewish, so I don't know how she had
Oh.
that name.
Yeah, I really don't know, but you see, we have this bond and this initial connection from the beginning. So it's great to be here. I'm super excited to be invited to your podcast, and very, very looking forward to speak to your audience today.
So, Shani, I think your kind of like main claim to fame is that you launched with a team the Israel market, the Tel Aviv market for Lime, which is a global, very well known startup that people, likely know.
Yes,
And I think the person that was leading it with you is now your husband. Um,
correct.
and you started your career, in finance. You've done a lot of operations and also product. And today you work for a very interesting company called Stream. God, I have
Element.
Stream Elements. I have Stream Labs in mind because that's the name of the company that we're doing the live streaming, the app that we use for live streaming. But so Stream Elements. So you head up a product for the marketplace part of the business,
Correct.
and why don't we just like start with what is Stream Elements and what exactly do you do there, and then what we'll do is back up to like where did you grow up, and go through your entire bio that way.
Sure, great. So let's start with StreamElements. StreamElements is a company. It's a global company founded by four intelligent and bright Israeli people. So we have headquarters in Israel. StreamElements is a company that is providing fame and fortune to content creators around the globe. When I'm saying fame and fortune, I'm referring to two parts of our business operations. The fame part is driven by our best in market tools for streamers, not just live streamers, but also YouTubers and also TikTokers. We provide many tools like Overlay Manager and Stream Alerts and chatbots and other tools that will help you, the content creators, better communicate with better engage with your community while in stream. The second part of our business, the fortune part of our business, is mainly driven by the marketplace that we're managing, the marketplace that is connecting big brands and and content creators around the globe to do performance campaigns. Now, for those who don't familiar with what is a performance campaign is a campaign that is performed by a content creator that is connecting their viewers to specific product or game or any kind of service that will help that will ideally match their needs. And we are doing it at scale. So right now, to do a performance campaign, and you're probably all familiar with it, it's the unique code that you receive from the best content creator that you follow. Right now, to do a performance campaign, it takes for most of the companies a lot of operations. It's a very big effort to connect with the creator, to brief them and make sure that we have the right fit and price and legal and contract, everything. But we are providing a full self-served marketplace for the content creators. So in other words, we allow all of the creators around the globe, as long as they meet the brand's needs, just to connect to our platform and take a campaign that fits them. We are allowing you, the creator, not you, of course, because you have a huge audience, but even a creator that has only like 2 followers, to take a campaign and start earning money from us. In other words, we are helping creators make money from what they love the most. So this is about Stream Elements. And as you said, I'm leading the marketplace product there and the marketplace operations as part of what we do.
Yeah, it's just such an important, problem, or an important space. Like I've, recently, since I started this podcast with Chris, become a content creator myself. One of the things that's, good about being part of the Blitzscaling platform is that we have support, from Reed's content team, from Greylock. We have support. We've been able to get a bunch of like really smart young people from like Yale and Harvard and Stanford and Princeton to like join us and work with us, right? So it's really made the job a lot easier, but still, it's a lot of work, and it's really hard to make money.
It is.
Um,
But let me ask you this, and because you are a content creator, and I'm assuming that most of our followers right now also view other content creators that like they're or listen to their podcast, right? So let's assume that if you need to prioritize top three things that are important by priority to content creators right now, what would they be?
yeah, I'd say number one is like being famous, like getting people to follow you, know who you are. I'd say number two, kind of engagement of your audience, right? So I kind of put those in two different categories. So it's kind of like the number of audience, and then like engagement of the audience. Then number three would be monetization. So and monetization probably, let's say for me, I don't know if it's different for other content creators. I would think it's nice to have the project pay for itself, right? So let's say I pay for this Streamlabs thing for live streaming, right? And there's another one that's better, StreamYards, but it costs twice the price. And it's like I'm not really making money, so I'm just gonna buy the cheapest one because I'm paying for this out of pocket. And like it would, so when I say making money, at least for me, it's cover the costs. I suspect that's also a bigger priority for other content creators. I don't know if you feel that's uh, representative of others.
Well, first of all, thank you for the honest answer, and I think that your response was actually very in line with the vast majority of other content creators. So yes, we have the most famous content creators that actually make a living, like 100% living. Actually, are being very, very rich by just doing this, like the content creation, and they're investing a lot of resources in it. But we have to understand that the vast majority of 95% of the content creators are not the huge one, obviously, right? We're talking about a very large market of around 300 million, by the way, content creators, meaning people that stream, but only 50 million of them are interested in making money. Meaning that by definition, as you rightfully mentioned, this is like the third of your priority. And even when you mentioned this, you didn't even say, I want to be rich by doing this, this podcast. I
Yeah.
just want to cover for my expenses. So the most, according to other researches done by Goldman Sachs and other good, researching firms, not by myself, of course, the top reason for people to choose to be content creators is actually freedom of expression. They want to make sure that they can express, what they believe in with the right audience, of course. And then the second reason is desire to make a difference. People want to make sure that they are making a difference, that are impacting other people. This is maybe the audience part that you touched on, the second priority. And then only the third reason is making money. And also, when we say making money, is it covering for my expenses? Is it just making me rich? Very like different
Yeah.
between potato. But this is putting ourselves, and we'll talk about that later on, I'm assuming, us as marketplace managers in a very delicate position of this very delicate ecosystem that on one hand, we want to make sure that we are helping creators being like rich or making money. But on the other hand, this is not the top priority for them. So what is it that we can do for them to make them do campaigns with us in a most authentic and reliable way for their audience, which is the most important thing for them, because they know that without their audience, they won't have
Yeah.
any place to desire, like to express their thoughts and whatever they want to express with and share their thoughts with the community. But I'm assuming we'll touch that in later on when we'll talk about the product itself.
Yeah, so let's back up and talk and you talk about you. But before we do that, so if I'm a content creator or I'm a brand,
Mhm.
where can I learn more about Streamlabs? Stream
Stream
Elements.
Elements.
Everyone has the same names in these businesses. So I guess it's streamelements.com.
Correct. So go to StreamElements.com. StreamElements is not only the most used platform. Our tools are the most used tools by mainly Twitch creators, but we also have tools to support, as said, TikTok creators as well as YouTube creators through our platform called Mercury. Um, we are providing tools for them, but you can also learn about our monetization strategy. So we paid over $1 million to content creators in the past few years, to be exact, to around 50,000 unique content creators. So it's a big marketplace, and we are definitely inviting you to check our marketplace, our catalog. And if you don't have any offer waiting for you, just let us know. You have a notify me button, and we'll make sure to contact you as soon as possible.
We have a couple of questions here that have come in, which we'll answer a little bit later. But I want to do a call out to folks that you can, just write questions for Shani in the comments. We're, on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube and on Twitter. So on Twitter, I don't think we'll see them, but on YouTube and on LinkedIn, they'll populate here, and then I'll ask Shani. So there you go. Shani, where did you grow up? Like in Israel, but like which city, and what's unique about that town, and what makes you you that you got from where the town or the city that you grew up in?
That's a big question. So, as you said, I'm Israeli and I was born in Israel. I grew up in a city called Ra'anana. Ra'anana is a suburb of Tel Aviv. It's a 20 minutes drive from Tel Aviv, but in Israeli scale is like a whole
Yeah.
different thing. So, my husband is originally from Tel Aviv, and he's treating me like I was an alien. It's just a different culture. And again, as said, only 20 minutes drive. So, it's a relatively small town. I was growing there. I was a dancer when I was a kid. In our city, most of the girls danced, and most of the guys went to basketball or scouts. But I think that what makes me who I am today is actually my very unique family. Maybe not that unique, but for me, it's the best and the most unique family. So my parents got divorced when I was 12, and both of them got remarried to other people. We all lived in a huge harmony, so we celebrated holidays together. And I don't know if you know this, but for Israelis and for Jewish people specifically, holidays are a big thing, and we have many of them, and we meet like every weekend and every holiday, so it's a big festivity around it. I have a lot of siblings, 8 to be exact. So I have 2 brothers from my stepfather, and other sisters and one brother from my father and my mother. So I think that having this very diverse family that is very open to everyone is something that made myself very adaptive and flexible. And I'm very family oriented person. But I'll definitely share more if anyone is interested.
I'm interested. So I've been thinking a lot about what makes people good team players.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'm unemployed now, or researching a new business. So I'm not hiring, but I will eventually. And one of probably the most important criteria is that people are able to play on a team. And the thing that people misunderstand about being a team player is that it's first and foremost about putting the team ahead of yourself. So it's like accepting that you matter less than everybody else, accepting that your interests need to be subordinated to the interests of the team, and having faith that that's going to lead to better outcomes for you, even though you can't see it. And my question is, do you feel that being from a family that is a large family, do you feel that that helped you kind of like understand that and think in that way? Yeah.
So, 100% the answer is yes. I think that my first example is my parents. That, like, I'm assuming like any other, like now I'm also a mother to a 10 months old baby. So like as a parent, I see it by myself. But as parents, you are letting go of a lot of things that are very important to you, just to make sure that your team, which is your family and your kids, are satisfied. And you need to do it in a very delicate way to make sure that they will be satisfied, but they understand why we are doing what we are doing. And I think it's very similar to teams at work. So the most challenging, I guess, role in probably any role, but specifically on product, is lead without authority. um, Being able to lead without authority, whether it's cross-functional management or just as a product manager, in most cases you don't have a team that is reporting to you, but there is a team of
Right.
developers, product designers that you work with, and other product managers, of course, and you have to combine everything into one harmony. And it's also a lot of about a fight of resources, if you may, right? Because we need to also prioritize, because always we have limited resources and we need to decide what is more important. So leading without authority is making sure that everyone is energetic, energized. You make sure that your point is clear enough, that you articulate your thoughts, and it's not just only in your head, but also bringing people together. And I think that the most important lesson that I had, like in the past years of my, like in the last 10 years of my career, is that eventually people wants to win. And when people want to win, you just need to help them win and help them get there. And the only way to win in a sustainable way is to have your team working with you and all aiming for the same goals. So you can give them the tools for that. You can make sure that you support them with whatever they need. And as you rightfully mentioned, probably sometimes it won't be like your top priority or the most exciting thing for you, but you need to do it because it's part of being a team member. And I think there's a whole debate. I'm not a big like soccer fan, right? But there's a whole debate between Messi and Ronaldo about who is a
Yeah.
player and who's the. So I think just be the Messi of the world, right? This is my recommendation to everyone.
So I'm like stopping myself because one of the questions we got is super related to what you just said, but I won't ask it because I want to ask you about what happened after. So you grew up in a town as a dancer in a suburb of Tel Aviv. And Tel Aviv, Israel being such a small place. I remember when I was in Israel, I was in Tel Aviv, and I thought the airport was in Jerusalem,
It's
and I was
in between Jerusalem to Tel Aviv.
yeah, exactly.
Only one airport in Israel. This is how small the country is.
Well, that's the thing, and I was like, okay, I have to like leave super early because the airport's in Jerusalem, and turns out it was like 30 minutes away.
Mhm.
Um, so
So very, very small country with so many opinions and so many thoughts and a lot of very opinionative people. So as you said, I grew up, as you again mentioned, I grew up in Nana. I was dancer, but I was also riding like I did horseback riding for most of my life. I was volunteering in a ranch that supported also like autistic kids and other people with some like limitations. And I was growing up, but I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. I knew that I
oh
will be
really?
lawyer. I will also be the youngest judge in Israel. That's what, and I have like videos that my mom took when I was 7, and it's like 7 years old. Who even know like what is like meaning to be a lawyer, right? My parents are not lawyers, and I was saying that I will be a lawyer when I'll be grown when I'll grow up. And then I had this thought in mind, and I went to the army in Israel. Army is mandatory, so I went to the army. I was an intelligence analyst, and I finished my army, and I knew that I will be a lawyer. I will be the youngest judge in Israel. And then 2 weeks before the university began, and I was planning to go to law school. I was getting into law school in Tel Aviv University, and 2 weeks before, I just realized that although I said it to myself, you're probably not going to be a good fit for me. So I was panicking, calling my dad. I was like, my dad is my best advisor, right? I was like calling my dad, hey, dad, Abba in Hebrew, what should I do? I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. So he's like, the most obvious question is, so what do you want to do? And I was like, after volunteering in this ranch, I know for sure that I want to be a psychologist. This is what I want to do. I know I'm going to support people and their like journey in life. And he's like, okay, I'll support you in whatever you want. Just have a fallback plan just in case you won't be a psychologist or something's changing. You're good with math. Maybe go like study math or like economy, something that is like good, with numbers. So I called my university, like the university, Tel Aviv University. The person answered, and then I changed um, my bachelor degree to psychology and economics. And after one semester, I knew that I'm not going to be a psychologist. It's just not for me. But I fell in love with economy. And I started to read a lot of books about economy, about theory of games, about a lot of things that are super interesting, about the fact that how economy is actually changing cultures and the world and changing everything and economy is in everything. It's not just about the money, it's about everything that we do. I finished my school. I became an economist, financial analyst for a big corporate, and then I moved to another big corporate in Israel. And after doing financial advisory and financial planning, and then M&A and company valuation for 5 years, I decided that maybe finance is not for me anymore. So now I know three things for sure. I know that I'm not going to be a lawyer. I don't want to be a psychologist, and I don't want to be a finance person anymore. The question is, what do I do want to do? Um, Taking a note, writing all of the traits that I have and all of the qualities that I have, talking to a lot of people that I admire and value their opinion, and connecting all of the puzzle pieces, I understood that my passion is in operations. In a almost cosmic way, a new operations position was opening in a new company that no one knew in Israel called Lime. Lime is a micromobility company. It was relatively young that time. Um, and the concept of shared micromobility was not even familiar to any Israeli. Moreover, when I called my dad, my advisor, as you remember, and told him, Dad, I am considering of joining this company, and he told me what they do, and I was like, it's a shared micromobility company, meaning they just have like their scooters outside on the street, and then people can rent them. And my dad was like, scooters outside of the streets in Israel? Everyone will steal them in like 2 seconds. I don't think it's even sustainable. Bam, 5 years afterwards, like Lime is the largest micromobility company in the world and also in Israel. And we know that shared micromobility definitely works. So
And Tel Aviv became the second biggest market
correct. So
for
the
Lime.
small was the second largest market for Lime that time. Now I think it's the third or the fifth or the fourth. Anyways, it's one of the top leading markets in a global company of 250 markets, which is huge. And it's largely due to again a cosmic combination of good weather, not reliable public transportation, and jammed city with very expensive parking, but also because of good work of the Israeli team that is managing the market. As said, I'm biased because I met my husband there. Joining the Israeli operations, so you need to understand this. Coming from big corporates in Israel, doing finance, wearing suits and heels to work, I now joined this Israeli operations, hands-on operations, and you might ask yourself, hands-on, what do you mean hands-on? Well, hands-on means that you need to also speak with the regulators, speak with the press, making sure that all of your drivers and mechanic people, they have the right instructions of doing what they need to do, managing your P&L, and also, if needed, deploying scooters from a van in the middle of the night just because we need to meet our target. So this is what you do, right? And we have so many funny stories about how we manage our operations and the big projects that we managed. And as you rightfully said, the latest project of my colleague then my husband now is our baby Alma. It's 2 months old, and again, recent project, the best project so far, by the way.
There's a so Reid Hoffman, who's a co-author of the book Blitzscaling. He wrote another book called The Startup of You, along with a guy called Ben Kasnoka, who was on my board or was an investor in my last business. Ben and one of the chapters of their book is called "Don't Make Decisions Alone," and the concept is this is like very Reid like to be like very intellectual about everything, but to use what he calls network intelligence to make decisions, which is really just to like call up people and ask them for advice when you make important decisions. And one of the things that stood out to me when you were talking is that that's something that you seem to be doing a lot of. Can you, I mean, am I right to think that that's something you do a lot of? And can you talk to us a little bit more about that if I am right?
Of course, yes, and 100% correct. I leverage, not use the help and the advice of people that I admire and I cherish. My father, my mother, my husband, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, a lot of smart and talented people around me that I definitely think highly about them, but also value their point of view in life because they're all very different from another. And this is probably related to the fact that I grew up in this very diverse family and everyone has different opinions. And I think that I'm a data person. So it's about having all of the data and let me analyze it and decide what is best for me. And I think that every time, and also in work, not just in my personal life, every time that I need to make a decision, I'm asking and I'm researching. And it could be like personal advice that I'm seeking for. It could be market analysis that I'm seeking for. And it could be speaking to creators or now in my life creators. But, at Lime, I was speaking to juicers. For those who are not familiar with Lime's operations, we have scooters or bicycles. We have riders that are riding these the tools, right? The micromobility tools vehicles. But we also have juicers, the people that are actually charging the batteries or charging the scooters. Now, here's a spoiler alert to the next topic of our discussion, but this is about the modern marketplace. Traditionally, marketplaces were managed in a way that could mainly serve customers. Why? Because customers are the one of the side that is actually paying you. So you need to make sure that this side is satisfied. And this is definitely makes sense. However, in modern marketplaces, we also have other side, which is the traditionally called supply side, but now it's actually the main user or the main customer that we need to serve. Why is that? Because this is the side that is serving your sustainability and reliability. So at Lime, it was juicers. We need to make sure that the juicers are charging the scooters in the most reliable way, consistent way to make sure that we can supply for the demand, in a reliable way for the demand of the users. And in StreamElements, we'll talk about that in a bit. We need to make sure that our content creators are there and taking the offers that we provide them in order to serve our paying customers, which are the advertisers. What is common between them is that it's not that easy to understand. This is what we started our discussion today. What is the most important thing for your customer, whether it's the traditional customer or the new customer? And this is why it's important for me to do the market research, to speak to creators, to do quantitative and qualitative analysis and understanding what is the most important thing, because it's not that obvious. And you know what? As an economist, it is counterintuitive, but it's not only prices. In most cases, by the way, prices will be the last thing that is important for your end user, the end customer. So yes, I'm doing a lot of research. I'm always asking questions, and it could be confusing sometimes. But it is important to follow your instincts, but collect all of the information that you can always.
So we kind of jumped over this, but you were in the Israeli army as an intelligence officer. I know there's some of these intelligence units that are like considered to be more elite than others, and there's this whole a lot of like jockeying around that in Israel. Like I think the way it works in Israel is kind of like the army unit you're in is the equivalent to like how Americans would think of the college you went to. Um, so tell us a little bit more about that. Like, uh, what was your experience doing that? Maybe that's normal in Israel, but for our audience, it's mostly in the U.S. I suspect none of them probably have been in the army. So, what was that like, and what did you learn from that feels unique compared to the experience of people in other countries who don't have that experience?
Wow, that's a big question, and I'll try to address it, but feel free to ask follow-up questions if you may have some of them. So yes, every 18 years person in Israel is going to serving time in the army. It's mandatory in Israel. This is the in direct translation we call it the People's Army because everyone is in the army. And yes, like any other thing that everyone is doing, of course, you have this hierarchy that you mentioned around like so the similar to colleges or like universities in the States. But in Israel, you go to the army because you need to, because you live in the country that you really love and you need to protect. And everyone is like you have so many different units, and some of them are more field units, and some of them are more analytics units, like intelligence units, and so on. And you serve your time in the army when you are 18. Now, 18 is a relatively young age, but given the way that our army is designed, at a very young age, you receive a lot of responsibility. So it definitely helps you develop, like it developed you as a person, as a persona, but also giving you tools to manage, um, multitask, to manage a lot of things, to lead. Some of them are commanders, right? So you lead your team. Um, as you mentioned, by the way, to lead your team in a way that makes sure that everyone is involved and everyone is aligned, and it's a team goal and not a personal goal. And it's definitely helping you see the world in different eyes because you're moving from the high school where you don't have any commitment to a
Yeah.
world where you're like highly committed to your goal. Everyone is relying on you, so it's not about like a junior position, whatever it is. It's you have a lot of responsibilities. In many cases, like responsibility for lives of people. Not being dramatic, of course, but it is what it is. And it's definitely help you grow as a person, but also as a professional. And a lot of the people that I think that the most common question, I don't know if it's the most, but it's definitely one of the most common questions in interviews in Israel is what you do in the army, because it usually says a lot about you. And for me, um, I learned how to, as an analyst, I learned how to receive a lot of data and choose what is important and what isn't important and prioritize because you cannot digest so not everything is important at the same level. It gave me a lot of responsibility. Um, it's about ownership of your domain and making sure that you cover it end to end. Um, is about discipline, waking up in the morning, very early in the morning, and finishing your day very late, and develop and dedicate yourself to a goal that you highly believe in. And I think this is where I started my journey as an analyst, but also as a professional person that is very passionate about what I'm doing. Yeah, I think that's about it. But the Israeli army is a whole, for everyone, like it's a different experience for everyone.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I mean, you would know this. Maybe some of our audience members, if they've been following us, know this. But I am a university dropout, so I did one semester, um, and then I mean, I started a job and I stayed in school after that semester part time, but I never graduated, or I have no idea how many credits I have. But I essentially dropped out after one semester, and I took a job working in a political party in Canada,
Mm.
uh, and relatively quickly after I had a technical role. It was a party that I believed in, which is why I worked for them. and very quickly I rose to very senior positions in that party. Where you deal with the Prime Minister of Canada, you would deal with Fortune 500 CEOs, and I've always felt that it's like that my perspective on life and work was very different from that of other people, and especially like when I'm working with younger people. As a startup, you hire people and who are in college, just out of college a lot, and um, I've always felt that it's doing people disservice to kind of infantilize them, for 4 years and like stop them from going out in the world and actually doing stuff. And yeah, it feels like your experience in the army somehow, uh, lines up with my experience working in this political party, taking on responsibility, doing things that matter. When I was 18. I don't know if you see that parallel as well.
100% yes, and specifically my army role was actually very similar to what you just described. Also, the type of involvement that I had with like politicians and so on. And I think that you are absolutely right, and this is where I encourage everyone that is not necessarily Israeli and need to go to the army, to take ownership. And eventually, we want people to take ownership of what they're doing, of their domain. And the more you lead, the more opportunities you'll have in your life, because people want to be near leaders. And I think this is like the best lesson that I can share about my experience. Lead, take ownership, be disciplined about what you're doing, dedicate yourself and develop yourself in a way that could help you definitely, see the next challenge and see the broader picture.
Yeah, and it's also taking on projects where you can fail and where like there's a high likelihood that you fail. This is one of the challenges, like when you're in university, right? Like you can't fail. Like the university makes money because you're there, like you're a customer, so they're not going to kick you out. You can get like bad grades, but they're not going to fire you. And all the projects that you do, like so you're leading a club or whatever it might be, like even people like start a startup while they're in university. It's like, well, I'm just doing this on the side while I'm in college. And there's something just really healthy about taking real responsibility, real responsibility being defined as something that you try to do, that you're all in on, and often it doesn't work, and then you look really bad and everyone thinks that you suck. And if you do that, you just accelerate your development because things just matter and you push yourself in a way that you wouldn't if you were kind of like nonchalant about it.
Mhm. So you touched on the most important quality or trait of a leader, the ability to take risks. And there's a reason why, and this is like the financial market side of me, but there's a reason why risk is quantified in high interest, because it's more risky, but it also bears the biggest opportunity. And the risks are taking the leap of doing something that no one else did. Because you know what? If you'll develop a product that suits 50%, 80% of the market, or very similar to others, you won't survive. You won't make it, and you'll probably never will acquire all of the users or whatever the base that you are trying to increase. My One of the people that I admire the most is Jacinda Ardern, which is the former Prime Minister of New Zealand. Aside from the fact that she's a young leader and she's just incredible and highly intelligent and sophisticated person, with a view of life that I highly appreciate, she took risks. And during COVID, during the pandemic, she was the first to take a bold stand and say, we are closing the gates, we are closing the country because we need to protect ourselves from this pandemic. And we saw the price of it. The price, like, it impacted the inflation, it impacted the economy there. She effectively resigned. Again, it wasn't said directly, but she resigned because of the situation in New Zealand, but she took risks. And this is where a leader must take a risk, and say at some point of the company or the journey, say, you know what, this is what we need to do. Because otherwise, you won't get anywhere. And just to close this, I think that the thing that is the most common for investors that made money is the number of failure they had. So you
Right.
cannot have a lot of wins without a lot of failures. And if you look at investors and Warren Buffett's of the world, you would see that yes, they had the highest number of wins, but they also have the highest number of failures, because this is how you grow and develop with minimal collateral damage as possible, of course.
Yeah, what's coming to mind to me when I was hearing you talk, which is there's a chapter in Machiavelli's The Prince
Mm-hmm.
where he discusses what do you do when two neighboring states are kind of fighting amongst each other. And he was saying the the only mistake is to not take a side.
Exactly.
So if you pick a side and your side loses, that's fine. If you pick a side and your side wins, that's fine. But if you pick no side, that is failure, and that's what doesn't work out for you. And he explains it in more depth, obviously. But that's what came to mind. I was hearing you talk. So usually, when you can find people in other domains that say the same thing, it's because you're right. So probably you're right, Shani.
Well, thank you for comparing me to Machiavelli,
Mhm.
which I also admire. But yes, of course, I understand what you are saying, and I definitely relate to this.
Let's dive into our topic. So, Shani, you worked at Lime. As we were saying, you were part of the leadership team that built up their Tel Aviv market, which became the second biggest market globally for this large business. And Lime is in a way a two-sided marketplace between people who kind of like charge the electricity of the batteries of the scooters, and the riders who pay for the scooters. And now you're working at StreamElements, which is again a marketplace between creators on one side and brands who sponsor them on the other. And what these two businesses have in common is that they are a supply driven marketplace, which is very common for online marketplaces now. Um, and your insight is, hey, in most online marketplaces today, you mostly need to care about the supply side, not about, you think it's the people paying you, but it's actually the people doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some unique dynamics, related to that. And I will let you kind of unpack that a little bit more. But before I do that, I will say one, we already have some questions that have come in. And if anyone who's listening wants to ask Shani questions about this topic, please just add them to the comments. Two, if you're watching this, recorded, make sure to join our next live stream so you can ask our guests questions. And then also remember to like this video um, and subscribe if you want to hear from other people like Shani. So Shani,
Yes.
drop some knowledge on us here.
Of course. So the most common thing about new marketplaces, or at least the marketplaces that I managed before, is that they are three ways marketplaces. They're not just two ways. So in traditional marketplace, we have the buyer, which is the demand side, and the seller, which is the supply side. In our new marketplaces, we have three sides. We have the demand side, which is in line with the writer, and at StreamElements is the advertiser, the brand that is publishing, right? We also have the supply side, that line it's the scooters. And StreamElements is a bit different because it's people, so they're never supply, but of course there are the side is consuming the the goods or whatever that we're selling. But we also have um, a new entity in the middle, which is the third party, right? At Lime, we had juicers charging the scooters, making sure that we have. It's not about the supply itself; it's about making sure that the supply is effective supply, right? They have enough battery and it's placed in the best places in the city. And StreamElements is the most important partner that we have, which are the content creators. Now, not only that we value our content creators, this is the focus of our company. We need to serve them in the most effective way, in the most sustainable way, to make sure that not only they will take the campaign that we are up or the campaigns that we are offering them, but they will also come back for more. So my main goal is to help creators make money and earn money by doing what they love the most. Um, some of them can do it as a primary job, some of them can do it as a side earning, but I just want to make sure that creators that are taking campaigns with us are not only enjoying it, but also coming back for more. And when we talk about how creators are even selecting campaigns, again, the most common thing or the most common answer that I usually hear from people that are not content creators, by the way, is money. Pay them more, they'll do anything. Or I mean, they'll take it. I'll be a bit cynical and I would say that I'm assuming that for most things in life, each of us have, we have our own price. It could be very priced very, very high. But we have a price, right? It's not the same for content creators. Changing the price is not changing dramatically that the demand or like their demand to do our campaigns or their willingness to take our campaigns. Because as we started this discussion, we talked about what is important the most to content creators, and you shared your point of view, and I shared with you the most common point of view, which is content. I want to make sure that it's the audience actually is the audience, and then the content that I provide to my audience, because I want to make sure that the content that I'm creating and I'm investing a lot of time in is definitely suitable for my creators, and it's authentic, and it's relevant for them. So it's authentic and relevant and suitable for them, and it's also authentic for me. I won't sell anything that I don't believe in, and it makes our work as marketplace managers more challenging. It's about finding the right balance, and the art of matchmaking between creators and the content that we are providing them. Because campaigns are also a new like an additional content channel, if you may. Um, and this matchmaking of finding the right timing and pricing and content, of course, and the benefits to audience, which is also important in performance marketing. It's not just about what we sell them; it's about what we give them in return. Is about the unique offer. Combination of everything is what makes an optimal marketplace to be what it is. And I think that there is a question in the chat that is actually relevant to what I'm saying, which is
Yeah, well,
what
let me pull it up. So we have a question here from Franklin at Stanford, and the question is, where is the energy in the creator space right now?
good. So we can talk about the platforms if you want, but I think that the most common thing for all content creators in all of our platforms and any other platforms is that the main focus right now is niche and community building. Is about building the right niche, making sure that the content that I give is not just general, is relevant to the niche that is interesting for my audience, because audience is it's a race of I guess it's a fight of time for the time that the audience are investing in you, and they have a lot of alternatives. They have Netflix, and they have other channels that they can watch, and they have other podcasters, and they have other alternatives, but you need to provide them with the right content that will suit their niche. So short answer is niche and building the community, getting to know your audience. And wider answer would be probably Kick is very interesting. It's a new platform that was just recently launched, so Kick is very interesting. Twitter is definitely interesting. Threads, and as you know, was just launched and created a lot of buzz. And when it comes to the content itself, I know it's a bit delicate right now to say it, but people are a lot about like interesting in AI and a lot of solutions that could help them optimize what they do. Um, is about teaching other people, how to do what they do better. And it's about health. People are very interested in health. in health and in balance in life. And I think it's more common than ever. This is, I guess, my 2 cents on this.
So one of the things that I think is core to what you're saying is that building a marketplace, and I think there's like, I think what you're saying is like there's increasing complexity in the marketplaces being built, right? So like the kind of like V1 online marketplaces like Craigslist, which is just like, people posting things online. And then, you'd have like, let's say like V2 marketplaces should be Airbnb that are slightly more, significantly more complex. But as we continue to, move along, and a lot of the components are built for these kind of like creating value that's sufficient to live to like 10x what people expect,
Mm-hmm.
requires additional complexity, um, and that means being very, very strategic. So presumably, a lot of your job, Shani, is to listen to people, understand them, and then you do a lot of thinking and of strategy. Am I right to believe that that's accurate?
Correct. So it's not only me, of course, it's also my team, but we are focusing a lot about understanding our creators, about understanding what drives them, what moves them the most. The competitive advantage of StreamElements is that we deploy performance campaigns with creators at scale. So you can be a creator with only one follower, and we'll still offer you, as I said, a campaign. For that, it's a whole different ball game. It's not just about the fact that I can pay you the X amount of dollars that you usually pay. We are basically selling campaigns to people that don't even know that they are interested in buying campaigns, right? Because they're streaming their weekends and their leisure time or whatever it is, but they're not even interested in making money off this. Maybe, to the extent of covering their expenses, but that's it. So it's about making sure that we give them the option of making money and do it in a way that is so suitable for them that is actually generating value, additional value that is not just money. It's not just about the money from the campaign. Um, and I think it's taking it, not moving away from StreamElements a bit and going back to my history at Lime. I think it's very similar to what we did with juicers at Lime, right? It's about finding people that don't even know that they have the option of making money on charging scooters. Maybe they can quit their day job that they do just to pay, rent, or just to pay university fee or whatever it is, and do charge a few scooters a day to allow them to focus on what they love the most, to allow them to focus on their interests or develop themselves. Um, and as you rightfully mentioned, it's more challenging than the old marketplaces, where when I'm looking for a new hotel or a new apartment to stay when I'm traveling to Berlin, I'll go to Airbnb. I proactively entering the Airbnb side or the Expedia side or whatever it is, and search for the best offer for me out of the list that they have. We are dealing with the third generation, I guess, of marketplaces, where we offer people things or products or services they don't even know that they want. And we need to make sure that it is suitable for them to make it more lucrative.
So how do you, as a product person, track that complexity and kind of like like in your day to day reconcile what you learn from the market with your thesis in a context where there's just like it's like too complex to kind of like hold it in your head, right? So what I did in my last business is I had an investment thesis for my business, right? So I had this Google Doc, and it was like 20 pages, and just like outlined everything that I believed, in great detail. And it was at the kind of like highest level, right? So it's at the business level, not at the product level. And then as I would go out in the world to either execute on things or whatever it is, speak to people, I would be looking to de-risk that, learn about that as quickly as possible, and then I would amend this investment thesis that I had about this business. Do you do something, similar? Meaning, you have like a written thesis around like what you think is the right strategy and why you think it'll work, and then you amend it and you kind of enrich it and you see this was wrong, this is right, etc. Or do you operate in a different way?
Oh, it's very as if you're living in my brain. So, yes, I'm a very visual person. So I have this huge Miro board. For those who don't know, Miro, by the way, go check it out. Miro, definitely one of the best platforms that I use. And I visualize everything in this board, and I have my strategy there. And as you touched it, I think that I always think about like two channels that I have in my head. One is the iteration and optimization of the current processes, and the other one is the innovation. It's about finding the next steps and the next channels and the next paths towards success. I think that product work is the 10x work. It's not just the optimization of the plus 15% or 10%. I hope it makes sense to most of you. It's not just about optimization that are usually are a result of iterations or like feedback and so on. It's also about being always innovative. So two channels, one is iterations of the current state and the other one is innovation of new one. But then this is, again, this is a circle loop of starting with the final strategy, the outlay your strategy as you mentioned, but then start this market research. And the market research is mainly focused on customer understanding. Understand who is your customer first, right? Not that intuitive, but then understand their needs. And then make sure that you have the right concept in head. You start to develop it. You prioritize it because from user interviews and from discussions, you will always receive so many things you want to focus on. You need to prioritize them by business value in correlation with the strategy that you just outlined and you develop. Make sure that you always develop it in an agile mode. So it's not about, so done is always better than perfect. Develop and make sure that you are always in motion, always develop. Don't build a product that will take you 2 years to build and then launch it to a market that is not even relevant for them. We know that everything is changing rapidly. So always monitor things and adapt. Monitor and adapt. And 85% sometimes is better than 90% or 95%, right? And I think that the most important thing that I can share with our like the audience right now is about making sure that we have the always the customer engagement and feedback loops, ongoing feedback loops. Make sure that you have design partners, people that you trust, always reviewing your product. There's sometimes there's a big sin that product managers usually do, which is to design the product that is the most suitable for them. We are not necessarily our audience. We need to develop the right product for the right audience. And although we can relate to them, we are not necessarily them. So always ask for advices, by the way. Make sure that maintain this ongoing feedback loop. And then, again, always innovate and iterate and innovate. So I think this is practically what I do, like so many channels that are like developed in parallel. And yes, I use visual aids like Miro boards and documents and my notebook actually. I don't know. I was born in '89, so I write things on like in my notebook. I don't know if people still do this.
I do that. I have a pile of notebooks. I mostly use them in the sauna.
In a sauna.
I write all my notes in the sauna, and then I take action on all my ideas. All my best ideas come to me in the sauna. So,
And it's easier to search than in notebook, right? You have the Control F function where you don't have it in notebooks.
so okay. There's this kind of like concept I think that you touched on, and I want to see if I got this right, which is like this concept of having like a working theory of things. So instead of saying like, hey, this is what is true, you say like, hey, here's what I currently believe to be true, or what we currently believe to be true. So you're doing this with the team, and then you're just like as a team updating this theory and am I right to have kind of like caught that what you're saying? And then if I am, can you talk to me a little bit more about it?
We believe in hypothesis. So I have my notion, and I always remind myself that, by the way, this is also a lesson from the army. Don't, in Hebrew we say, don't fall into your own conception. You need to understand that what you think is not necessarily the truth, but is a notion or it's an hypothesis that you need to validate. So as being a data person or number person, I always say that we have this hypothesis. Let's look for validations in data, and we don't have it. Let's test it. You can test everything you want as long as you know how to measure it. So we always try to test, and I think the best way to develop to validate what you believe in is just by testing it. And testing is a very wide concept, right? You can test it. I love to test things at scale, but you can sometimes test it just with a few users that you believe that they are a good representation of the bigger population. But honestly, in some cases, go with your intuition. In some cases, you just need to follow your intuition. And worst case scenario, you'll fail, and it's part of it. And then you just need to make sure that your failure is not that big, so you can recover from it.
Yes, it's about kind of having a working theory and then as quickly as possible, validating or invalidating it or gathering information about it and de-risking it essentially in a manner that is maximally quick. And sometimes maximally quick means doing a large scale experiment that's kind of like scientific. Sometimes being maximally quick means finding some real people and looking at like them, and sometimes being maximally quick and like having like the quickly de-risking things and getting like maximum ROI in your de-risking is to to look at it through the prism of a theory and of your beliefs instead of looking at the data, because the data is always back in the past. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're doing, right? So you have these working theories, and then you're trying to de-risk them in one of those three ways, and while staying connected to customers as much as possible.
Correct. And you know what? Sometimes you won't be able to. Agility is a key, especially in like this recent period where dynamics are more challenging in the market, and we don't have the luxury of testing things for 3 years before we launch them, or testing new features for 2 years or 2 months even before we launch them. So yes, we need to take some risks, but we also need to find proxies. So there are a lot of other proxies that are not that easy to find sometimes, but you can just find them. And the proxies are the best representation that you have of the desired state. And I'm encouraging everyone to find the right proxies, by the way, just to allow you to move faster. Because also relying too much heavily relying on data could slow you down, and this is not how entrepreneurship works. I mean, you can tell the audience from your own experience, of course, but we need to make sure that we are moving fast and we are adaptive. So here's the thing about data. Even if we have this data from 2 years ago or from 2 months ago even, things have changed. Market dynamics have changed. Sometimes the data from 6 months ago is not that relevant. So make sure the data is reliable, is recent as possible, and you have what you need to move fast. It's not everything that you need, but it's good enough. And done is better than perfect. And we'll repeat it 10 times more, until people will, absorb it, because this is how organizations can work.
And when you're dealing with these like more complex marketplaces, right? So there are more moving pieces, and there's more, like there are more facets to the marketplace that you need to learn about. Like you don't, I guess what you're saying is, because of that, you don't have the luxury of obsessing and spending, way too much time understanding one facet because there's too much to understand. Like you can't spend like 40 hours interviewing people for one thing, or test out a million different versions of something, because there's so many like pieces for you to wrap your head around in a marketplace that has more complexity. Uh, like what like I guess my question is, which parts are most different or most exacerbated, and because of the complexity of newer marketplaces?
Oh, good. That's a great question, and I have hopefully a great answer that is fresh from this week, or actually from the beginning of last week. So up until now, or 2 weeks ago, the most common way for me and for our team to communicate with our creators was through the representatives or through interviews. And we also had a lot of learnings from reviewing tickets, support tickets at Receipt. Now, by definition, support tickets are biased. Why? Because you usually don't go to support unless you are very, very dissatisfied. And even more severely, it is negatively biased because some of the people that are complaining are not actually reaching to support and just deciding to drop whatever they want to
Right.
drop, no matter what is the marketplace. However, as you said, interviewing people takes time. And in interviews, you have a lot of learnings. And how do you even prioritize between them? And what do you focus on? And how do you ask the right questions without leading the witness, if you may, right? So a recent feature that was developed by one of our product managers from my team is a very simple solution that actually changed the way that we look at numbers right now. So last week we developed or we released a new feature, which is creator score or feedback score after creator finishing a campaign. And they can give a score ranging between 1 star to 5 stars. And they can also add a comment. They don't have to, but they can leave a comment. Making this feedback option so easy, so accessible, allow us to have feedback at scale. So to monitor on a daily basis the heartbeat of our marketplace and to receive written feedback that would never go to, and we learned so many things that never went to support, but it's there, they're doing it, it's one line. It's not about going to the support center, finding the right whatever it is and submitting the ticket, right? And we received so many scores. Some of them were great. We learn about what's interest like the most for our creators. Great, let's go get more of these. And we learned some of the things that are not working well for our creators. By the way, we received another strong enforcement that is about that the most important thing for our creators is content, is about the fact that we need to make sure that the games or the content itself is something that their community can relate to, is about making sure that the matchmaking process is optimal. And this is a relatively small change, right? The 5 stars review is not something that we've invented for nothing from scratch. But it was a dramatic change. It was developed again relatively fast, quickly by one of our most talented PMs, and and we see the results. And this is where you can rely on data at scale in the most efficient way. So yes, we don't collect all of the data that we probably would like we're collecting if I were interviewing the specific creators, but it's good enough.
Yeah, so it's about essentially it's like instrumenting, so like creating instruments or create like building tooling that enables you to more rapidly collect data, and that's really important in a context where you have so much to learn about and have so much complexity to wrap your head around as a product leader.
Yeah, and think about this. Where do you prefer? So think about the difference between the two questions, right? What's your dream destination, or what would be your dream destination out of the five? Paris, Rome, Massachusetts, Barcelona, and Tel Aviv. it's much more like it's easier to answer the or other. You know what? Okay, let me give you the option of having other. So it's about how you design the product in a way that will be more intuitive and more connected to the needs of the creators. So if we were, and we know that time is important, and we know that sometimes it's harder for people to think about things from scratch. So we need to give them the right aid for that.
Right.
And by providing them with the right support, they are supporting us with providing them the best service that is matching their need.
Right. So it's like making it easy for creators to give you. You're essentially designing the input that you need to design the product.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting. Well,
this is like a great lesson that I learned from one of my mentors, and then maybe I can give to other product managers in the audience. Maybe um, be explicit. Be explicit. And you know what? Maybe the five answers that you give in this example, right? Maybe the audience won't like some of them won't be choosing one of the five cities that I just mentioned, right? Um, but most of them will, and it will definitely help you learn more and faster about your community and about like the audience that you serve.
so we have we're getting to the end of this, and I want to make sure that we answer the question that we got here. And the question is from Melissa Torres, who's a software engineer at Meta. And she says, so she added this on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
So if you guys, for the audience, if you follow our LinkedIn page or you follow us on Twitter, if you just look up Blitzscaling podcast or Blitzscaling a startup, you'll find us on either of those. So you can always ask questions there. But here's Melissa's question. So her question starts with saying, Shani seems so accomplished. So there you go. So I agree, Melissa. So what is the number one thing PMs wish the engineers they work with understood better?
Business. I think that sometimes, and again, it's a very general saying that is not relevant to 100% of the engineers, but from my experience, engineers are builders, and we need to have builders, but we also need the builders to understand the goal of what we're building. So I know that it's much easier to work with a spec that was written for you and was packed by the PMs and the rest of the product team. Be part of the discovery, be part of the discussions, talk with the customers yourself. Trust me, the product that you will be building will be much more efficient. You know why? Because you understand the infrastructure as an engineer, as engineers. Now, this is your like superpower. You understand the infrastructure. And while the product manager can come up with a solution, and let me be very graphic about this, a solution that is this, as an engineer that understand the infrastructure, you can come with a solution that is like this. So you are getting to the same point in a much more efficient and solid way to make sure that the infrastructure that we are building will serve for our main goal and will have a positive impact in the future. But for you PMs and designers, I know that it's not necessarily that intuitive sometimes. Invite the engineers to discussions. They need this push from you, and trust me, you need them as partners because whenever you are getting into the squad immersion, it'll be beneficial for everyone.
So do you know what the book Innovator's Dilemma is? Have you heard of it?
What is it? No, I'm not familiar.
It's a well-known business book from the 90s from a guy who's a Harvard prof called Clayton Christensen. And
Mhm.
I was watching this interview with him this week, um, like on the Harvard Business Review YouTube. I think he's dead now. He's either dead or like really old. This is an old interview. And he was relating this experience he had where he was called in to like give a presentation to the CEO of Intel,
Mhm.
Andy Grove, who at the time was like the top guy in business. And Andy Grove was telling him, okay, I heard you have something interesting, like some interesting theory here. Tell me what it means for Intel. and Andy Grove was like really pushing him to just like tell him specifically what would need to be done so that he can evaluate and like take action or not. And he was telling the story, and he was saying he refused to tell Andy Grove what it meant for Intel. And what he was trying to do was show him the framework and help him understand, the theory. And then like Andy Grove, with his expertise on microprocessors and Intel's business, was able to say, oh, I understand what this means for Intel. It means that they're whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But when you were talking about this relationship between engineers and product people, it kind of sounds the same, where actually as a product person, it's hard for you to actually create specs that are good, because the engineers know a lot of things that you don't know. And the specs that you create will just be inferior in many ways, just like Clayton Christensen's prescriptions for Intel will be inferior to Andy Grove's. And it's required for the product people to give the engineers visibility into the why, into the context, so they can participate. And it's required for the engineers to go along and make the effort to understand, the context, so that they can participate in improving the specs. Am I getting that right?
You're getting it absolutely right. And by the way, I think that specs should be written together, just by the fact that if you're writing it, and someone else is reading it, something, and you're not in both sides, something will always get lost on the way. And I think that, and I didn't just mention business as like a general saying. I think that also product managers and product people and designers should be connecting with the business. Join sales meeting, join account management meeting, understand both sides of the marketplaces, or the customers that are part of your business. It will make you better business people. It will make you better product managers, and focusing on your niche, but always be open to other areas of the companies. Even if it's finance, even if it's legal, even if it's something that is not directly related to what you're doing, trust me, everything is a delicate ecosystem that is connecting all of the pieces together.
Yeah, we interviewed a guy called Raja Mannar. I think I'm getting his name not right. Who's a global chief marketing officer at MasterCard. And this was his thing. That's what we talked to him about, which was he would get his marketers to go work in other divisions of MasterCard, because understanding the other functions enables you to be a better marketer. And it sounds like you're saying the same thing here, where it's like understanding the other facets of the business enables you to be a better product manager.
Yeah, I think it was part of I don't know if it's true anymore, but when I learned, like when I was in business school, I learned about the Toyota factory in Japan that was forcing every people in every department move every 6 months between department, which is counterintuitive to any efficiency method that we are familiar with. But effectively, they were more efficient just because they understood exactly all of the other parts, and this allowed the pieces could be combined and connected well together in a harmonic way, and provide Toyota cars, which are, as we know, amongst the best cars in the world. So there you go.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about this. So when you do, ideally as a professional, right? Like you are spending a lot of time learning. And you also need to be doing. And this is like the insight is actually learning is a full-time job and doing is a full-time job. So, you pretty much have to work like 16 hours a day just to keep up, because you have these two full-time jobs, doing your job and then learning how to do your job. And if you don't put in that time, you can do that, but then you'll just always be falling behind.
one of the biggest learnings and lessons that I learned from one of my mentors, which is also one of the founders of the company that I work for, and the CEO of the company, Gil Hirsch, and also a product guru, by the way. For those who are not following him, please follow him. He's definitely your guy. And this is actually circling back to the point about iteration and innovation. You cannot only spend your time in operations, and operations as a metaphor. You cannot just make sure that the current work is being done. You always need to think about a few steps ahead. You always need to have this growth mindset about the next steps. What would help us, in the future? And it's not that easy, and it's not intuitive, and it's very easy to get lost in the load of life and work. So a tip could be to schedule some time in your calendar, like block time for innovation. So take a easy day for you. It could be Friday, it could be Sunday, it could be Thursday, or whatever the most calm day for you of the week, and block 3 hours. And respect these 3 hours. It's not like a time to sleep or to watch Netflix. Respect these 3, 4 hours that you have to organize your thoughts, to read, to hear maybe audiobooks. I'm currently reading a book that I'm fascinated by called Noise. I learned that it's hard for me to read right now because my
Yeah.
head, like, very load with everything. So I'm listening to books, and take any kind of advice that you want from any other people, but just make sure that you invest time in yourself, in learning and in self-development, because you will need it in 2 months from now, in 6 months from now.
Yeah, it's a bit like the what's it called? It's the Red Queen. Have you read Alice in Wonderland?
I have.
So there's like I think it's the Red Queen, and Alice talks to her, and she's like, "Yeah, like in here, you have to, run as fast as you can just to stay in the same place." And that
And
really is what it's like.
it is. It is exactly like that, as you just described it. And in economy, we have this concept of, let me translate from Hebrew very fast, but it's like the marginal, incremental benefit, I guess. I'm not sure if it's a good translation, but it basically means it's a concept that's saying that the more people you add to this team, the incremental contribution will be lower, right? And this is exactly how it is with work. At some point, there's a tipping point that if you invest more and more hours of the same task, it won't be more efficient, and you can definitely allocate this time to do something else alternatively that could benefit you more.
So, final question before we, wrap this up. So we were talking about when you were, getting out of the army and starting to think like, what is it I want to do actually as a job?
Mhm.
And if you were going to go back, in the past and give yourself advice at that point, in your life, and that's the point in the life that most of our audience is at. What advice would you give to yourself? Like the post army you.
Um, Expand your toolkit. Meet with people, speak with people, learn from people, listen to them, be present when you're speaking to them. Every discussion that you have, every connection that you can make is another tool in your toolkit. And you can always pull it whenever you need it. And I think that learning from other people, taking the advice of other people, listening is very important. And don't afraid of making changes. Don't be determined. You heard my story. I moved from finance to operations to product to operations again and then product. And you know what? Let's speak again in 5 years and see where I am. It's about taking all of the tools that you gained over the year and convert them into growth. And this is my advice to you. Just listen and make sure that your toolkit is always growing.
So thank you so much, for the time, Shani. Thank you for everyone who tuned in during our, live stream. Thank you to Melissa and to Franklin who, contributed questions for Shani, and I guess remember to like this video, share it if you know anybody who would benefit from this conversation. Please share it, and if you want to hear from other people like Shani, just subscribe or like this video. And Shani, I'm going to end our stream here.
Thank you, Julian. It was a pleasure.